Hi, my lovies. I am so excited to welcome you to the first episode of Spiritual Tea. I know I've been promising this for 2 weeks now. Thank you for your patience. We had the heat wave weekend before last. It was 100 degrees in my apartment. It was 111 degrees outside. Last weekend, I totally forgot it was 4th of July. We needed to go down and see the husband's family. But I'm here again. Thank you. And I am so excited. The subject I picked for this week's spiritual tea is empathy, compassion, and understanding. That is something that I have struggled with in my own personal life ever since I can remember. I have a very low tolerance for stupid, and I can get frustrated with people sometimes. So I figured instead of getting frustrated and angry and feeling all out of sorts, I would start coming from a place of being empathetic, being compassionate, and trying, even though I might not agree with it, trying to understand at least where someone's coming from. It's really easy when you see an ambulance, going down the street, to get out of the ambulance's way because you have a lot of empathy and compassion, and understanding in that kind of a situation, in a big, huge situation. Somebody's dying, someone's in ill health, families all, in chaos right now. So that to me is like an easy empathy, compassion, and understanding perspective. It's real easy to be that way in the big stuff. But how do we become that way with the little things? Like people cutting you off in traffic. How do you deal with that? Dealing with a cashier, or if you happen to be in the retail food industry, dealing with a customer that's really difficult, things like that. Dealing with a coworker that you would just rather freaking than have to ever deal with them again. Those are the hard times. Those are really the hard, frustrating times to where we would rather just say than practice some empathy, compassion, and understanding with these people. But that is actually when we really need to draw from the inside and project out that positive, project out that human wanting to understand human and help human. So what I had to do was, it happened one day. I was rushing to work back when I worked 9 to 5 in an office, and the car in front of me stopped and let somebody pull out of the grocery store parking lot. And I'm like, oh my God, do they not understand? I have places to be, I have things to do, and can you play Good Samaritan on someone else's time? And I'm like, wait a minute. You just got frustrated and actually projected anger at another human for trying to do a kind deed, right? So I had a conversation with myself. I do that a lot. And I'm like, why were you so quick to jump on that train over someone's good deed? And I'm like, well, it's making me late, and I had shit to do. And I'm like, so basically, you're stressed out in your own life. You left a minute late, and everybody got to accommodate you. I'm like, why don't you try seeing it from a different perspective, First off, I don't know how long that person had been in that Safeway parking lot waiting to come out and enter the road. What if they had already been there for 5 minutes because they already had the attitude I had, all about me, not about you. So I'm like, yeah, and they probably got things they got to do, places they got to go. I mean, maybe they're going to pick up their kids. I didn't know that story. Maybe the car in front of me knew they had been sitting there for a while, so they figured they'd be nice. And that's kind of when I decided to slow my roll a little bit. And I started, instead of jumping on things, well, first I started leaving earlier because, stuff happens. But, every time something frustrates me, I will go through a grocery line and maybe the cashier is a little short with me. And I'm like, boom, I shut it down. like with 1 second, I shut it down. And I ask myself, first off, this ain't about me. I take the personal off of it. And I think for a minute, I actually look at that cashier. I try and see them. I try to see that cashier. What is the expression on their face? How is their body language? Do they look a little frazzled? Did it look like they maybe threw their hair up too quick? You know, because maybe they were rushing out the door. Do I know what kind of night they had last night? What kind of situation did they have before their shift? What happened 5 minutes before I got there? You don't know someone else's story. My mom, actually, she went to a grocery store one time, and the girl behind the counter was extremely rude to her, and my mom went back crazy, okay? You know, the supervisor walked up, and she was like, we are really sorry you had a bad experience with this, you know, cashier. And it was a bad experience. It really was. But the cashier said, can you please, you know, have a little compassion on her right now? She had a miscarriage yesterday. And I'm like, yeah, see, my mom's not as enlightened yet. But anyway, so you don't know what you're walking in on. Another time I was in line at the grocery store, and it was like in the 10 items or less lane or whatever. So I'm, you know, they're getting like 1 or 2 things. I'm, you know, jumping in the express lane. There are these 2 guys behind me. English was their second language, and they were still learning. They were not there yet. And they had walked up and put like 20 things down. There was an older couple right behind them. It was an elderly man and his elderly wife. He got huffy. He got really huffy with these 2 guys who had put, you know, way over the amount on the conveyor belt. And he was loudly protesting it. Extremely loudly protesting it. Well, my first thought was maybe he, you know, just has an issue with the Hispanic population and everything. And the guys behind me, they were like, you know, what is going on? We don't know why this guy's mad. We can obviously tell by his tone and his body language and the way he's looking at us. You know, he's really angry and everything. And I'm like, you guys are fine. And then the older gentleman looked at me and he goes, my wife just got out of the hospital. We've got her prescriptions. I want to get her out of here and go and get her home. And he was very short, very curt, not even trying to convey, you know, please have sympathy on me. And I was like, oh no. I said, yeah, you need to get her home. So I looked at the guys behind me and tried to the best of my ability to communicate with them, you know, what was going on. And they understood then, you know. And I looked at the gentleman and his wife and I was like, I want you 2 to come up here in front of me. And everything. And the wife was embarrassed. And she was like, please, 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 you know. And I was like, no. I'm like, he's concerned about you. You just got out of the hospital, sweetheart. And his focus is on you. And he's trying to be a good husband, you know. You guys go ahead of me. Get your medicine. And I want you to go home. And I want you to get well. And you focus on yourself. You don't know people's story. And it's really hard. We were driving down to Longview. And it actually applies to me too. But we were driving down to Longview. And oh my God. People going too slow. These RVs on some windy roads can just be horrible, and I hate it, and it frustrates my husband and everything. So every time, you know, that happens. So I instead of getting frustrated, I create a scenario in my head because I don't know where these people are from, and I'm like, what if, just a big what if. What if they're coming down from King County, Seattle, Pierce County, whatever, a big, huge city, not really nature-oriented, and usually you have your 9-to-5ers that work up there that do it Monday through Friday. They have, I hate to say this, please forgive me, but like I call it, you know, the crappy little life, the little rat race, you know. And I'm like, so what if they're in these counties, and they're in that rat race, and they don't get out much, you know, to go do the fun stuff. And this is like their 2 weeks a year that they get to go and take a vacation. And they're not used to these roads. So they're not going to want to drive them quick. If they have the big RV, they definitely aren't used to driving this RV, so they're not going to do it very well. And all they want to do is get to the ocean or wherever they're going, and they want to relax, and they want to do it safely. They would rather be 5 minutes late than not show up at all. And then when I look at it that way, about the happiness that they're going to have, on their vacation or their 3-day weekend or whatever, and that they're getting a break from the reality, of it all, and that monotonous of life, I become happy. And their slow driving, it cracks me up. It brings me actual joy, because I know what's at the end of it for them. They're going to go to the beach. They're going to have their cookout. They got their families. They're going to take a ton of pictures. They're going to post them all over Facebook. They're creating memories, I just bring some empathy, compassion, and understanding into it all. And I think that's what we all got to do in real life situations. We always do. We have to jerk ourselves to a halt and take a look at the situation. Take a look at the person, And I really think that spreads love around, and that puts such beautiful energy out there. It elevates your frequency, which elevates your whole consciousness. So the next time somebody cuts you off in traffic, the next time somebody's driving too slow in front of you, have pity on them if they cut you off in traffic, because obviously they're so stressed out about their life that they're being rude. I don't think we want to be rude as people. So that's when you have compassion. Wow, you are so stressed out in your life that you're willing to be rude and possibly harm another human just to get to point A to point B. If they're driving a rig way too slow, you don't even know. There could be a ton of stories about that. It could be a husband bringing his wife home from the hospital after an abdominal surgery. Yeah, my honey's had to deal with that 3 times. Yeah, you gotta drive slow when your partner's had abdominal surgery. It hurts going over a little tiny rock. It could be anything. I think that we need more empathy, compassion, and understanding in today's world. You might not always agree with things. Like, I feel you shouldn't drive an RV if you really aren't that experienced. But I understand why you would drive one. Even though you're not, if it gets you down to the ocean for a couple of weeks, you can have cookouts, take pictures, and be with your family. I understand that, So we need to practice that a lot. Instead of letting this petty ass day-to-day bullshit divide us, frustrate us, and anger us, take yourself out of it. Create the scenario in your head about the possibilities it could be, and just understand, have compassion. Dang, during this heat wave, I got a lot of compassion. I went out and foraged for food when it was 111 degrees. Dude, it's part of why I volunteered to go forage for food, because air conditioning in the car. Homeless everywhere all over the city. Everywhere. You couldn't look anywhere and not see, a homeless person. And I got flooded with compassion thinking about that. A lot of people like to bitch about the homeless and seeing them here and seeing them there and all that. But I got a lot of compassion that day. All the guys had their shirts off. All the women were half dressed. It was hot as shit. What do you expect anybody to do stuck outside? And that's it. They were under trees. None of them had any water, which was heartbreaking. And they were under trees trying to do the best they could do. And I'm just like, I am so grateful that I'm in this car right now with air conditioning, that I get to go home and sit under 3 fans, that it's going to cool down soon if it's the last day, you know? So we just have to. And that's called empathy. And then that gives you compassion. And then you can definitely understand what would I do if I was stuck outside. I'd be half naked under a tree. All right. I love you guys. That's your homework for this week. Take a situation, and when it starts to frustrate you, shut it down and get some empathy, compassion, and understanding. All right. I want to hear how it worked out for you in the comments. I love you guys.